Today, we're going to tackle a really strange economic puzzle. It's about how something great, a real breakthrough, can somehow end up hurting the very people it's supposed to help. How can good news for the world turn into bad news for your wallet? Let's find out. So, let's just kick things off with a question that sounds almost like a riddle, right? Can a huge leap forward, something that seems good for absolutely everyone, actually backfire and harm the people it was designed to benefit? It sounds kind of impossible, but you're about to see that it happens more than you'd think. Okay, picture this. Imagine you're a wheat farmer out in Kansas. Some brilliant folks at a local university just created this miraculous new hybrid of wheat. And get this, it lets you grow a whopping 20% more on every single acre. This is fantastic news. More food for everyone, more wheat for you to sell. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? But then, something totally unexpected happens. As all the farmers start using this amazing new hybrid and bring in these gigantic harvests, they check their bank accounts. And their total revenue, the actual money they're making, has dropped. A lot. How on earth does producing more of something lead to earning less money? Well, the answer lies in one really powerful economic idea. And that idea, it's called elasticity. This is the key that unlocks this entire puzzle. The best way to think about it is as a measure of the stretchiness of our desire for something when its price changes. So here's the official textbook definition. The price elasticity of demand is just a way to measure how much the amount of something people want to buy changes when the price goes up or down. At its core, it's a pretty simple ratio. You take the percent change in how much people buy, and you divide it by the percent change in the price. But honestly, forget the formula for a second. There's a much easier way to think about this. Imagine elastic demand is like a rubber band. You pull on the price, and the quantity people want stretches. A lot. Now imagine inelastic demand is like a piece of string. You can pull and pull on the price, but the quantity demanded barely budges at all. And this slide right here breaks it down perfectly. A product has elastic, or stretchy, demand if a price change makes us buy a whole lot more or a whole lot less of it. This usually happens with things we consider luxuries or things that have a ton of substitutes. On the other hand, inelastic or stiff demand is usually for necessities, the things we kind of have to buy no matter what the price is, mainly because there just aren't any good alternatives. For example, if the price of some essential medicine goes up, you're probably still going to buy it, right? That demand is inelastic. But what if the price of a fancy cruise vacation doubles? Yeah, you're probably going to find something else to do with that money. That demand is super elastic. Okay, now we're getting to the real heart of our farmer's problem. How does all this talk about stretchiness actually impact the total amount of money a seller brings in? First, a super quick definition. Total revenue is just the price of the item multiplied by how many you sold. Price times quantity. This is the number that our farmers saw go down, and it's the number that we really need to understand. Now, take a look at this graph. This is where it gets really interesting. When demand is inelastic, remember that's our piece of string, if you increase the price, people only buy a tiny bit less. So the extra cash you make from the higher price easily makes up for the few sales you lost. And the result? Your total revenue actually goes up. But when we flip over to elastic demand, a rubber band, the story completely changes. If you try to raise the price here, the number of people buying your product just drops off a cliff. You lose so many customers that it totally cancels out the higher price you're charging. And the shocking result is that raising your price actually makes your total revenue go down. So this gives us two simple but super important rules to remember. For inelastic goods, price and revenue move together in the same direction. For elastic goods, they move in opposite directions. This is the absolute secret to solving our farmer's mystery. All right, we've got all the pieces of the puzzle now. We've got the new wheat, the falling income, and our new rules of elasticity. So let's head back to that farm in Kansas and finally crack this case. And here it is, the last critical piece of information, coming straight from our source material. The demand for basic food like wheat is inelastic. It's a necessity, it's pretty cheap, and there just aren't a lot of great substitutes for it. It is definitely the string, not the rubber band. So now let's watch how this plays out on the graph. The new wheat hybrid shifts the whole supply curve way out to the right. That means there's a flood of new wheat on the market. But remember, demand is inelastic, so people don't really buy that much more wheat, even with a lower price. So you've got a ton of supply and only a tiny increase in demand. The only thing the price can do is collapse. And what does that mean for the farmers' wallets? Well, look at this. In the example from our source material, their total revenue from selling all that wheat actually falls from $300 all the way down to $220. The drop in price was just so much bigger than the small increase in sales. And just like that, the paradox is solved. The good news, that amazing new technology led to a massive increase in supply. But because the demand for wheat is inelastic, this created a price crash so severe that it completely wiped out any of the benefits from selling more, actually leaving farmers worse off than they were before. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting for farmers, but what about the rest of us? Well, it turns out this idea of elasticity helps explain all sorts of surprising things in the world all around us. It is everywhere. Take the oil crises back in the 1970s. OPEC decided to cut supply, and gas prices shot through the roof. Why? Well, because in the short run, our demand for gas is really inelastic. We still have to drive to work, right? In the cars we already own. But in the long run, we adapt. People buy more fuel-efficient cars, they start carpooling, maybe they move closer to their jobs. Demand becomes way more elastic, and OPEC's power to keep those prices high starts to fade. And believe it or not, elasticity even gives us a powerful lens to look at really complex social issues, like the market for illegal drugs. The source material points out that because the demand for addictive drugs is highly inelastic, policies that just try to reduce the supply can cause the price to spike. This can actually lead to an increase in total spending on drugs, which some argue fuels more crime to pay for it. In contrast, policies that focus on reducing demand could potentially lower both the price and the amount of drugs consumed. Okay, let's bring this right down to your grocery list, because this applies to stuff we buy every day. Check out this data. The demand for eggs, incredibly inelastic. We just buy them. Beef, on the other hand, is elastic. We can always switch to chicken or pork if the price gets too high. But look at Mountain Dew, an elasticity of 4.4. That demand is ridiculously stretchy, mostly because if the price goes up, you have dozens of other sodas you can pick from. So, I'll leave you with this question. The next time you're out shopping and you see a price change, think about elasticity. Is your demand for that product a rubber band, or is it a piece of string? The answer tells you a lot more than you might think about our economy and about how the world really works.